Oftentimes in self-improvement, what we desire to do is, I suppose, to add something on, to stitch something new onto yourself, a new good habit, a new hobby, a new practice, a new skill that you can do that will set you just that one step ahead of who you were the day before, right? And I think that's fine and dandy. But what I also think is that it fails to consider one major factor, that oftentimes self-improvement isn't about just simply adding things on. It's also about, in a way of words, trimming the fat from yourself, right? From taking the worst parts of yourself and, cutting down on it, or perhaps even eliminating it together. So, ask yourself, what's the worst habit I'm doing wrong? What's something that I can do? What's something that I should do? What's something that I would do if I was a better person, right? What's something that I wouldn't do specifically? For me, unsurprisingly, I think as is very, perhaps even at this point, stereotypical for a teenager, I'd say it'd probably be my social media use, my use of my phone. I think it's quite excessive. And I think that this is something that is acting against me in my self-improvement journey, in my attempt to grow as an individual, right? But it doesn't even need to be that, of course. It might be simply, maybe even it's just like the 7 deadly sins. So, well, maybe I indulge too much in lust, or maybe I eat too much, or I love money too much. Maybe I'm dedicating so much time to becoming a richer person that I can't even spend any time with my family. So I think that's important. So how do we go about constructing new habits, and how do we go about dissolving poor habits? Well, I believe Aristotle, from what I've collected, he believed that virtue was simply a collection of habits that you're essentially pretending to do continuously to the point where it becomes your nature, right? So when you're beginning a habit, a new habit, the absolute key is just consistency, right? Do it every day, and if you ever miss a day, then make sure you don't miss it the next day, because that's the start of a new habit, isn't it? Right? So let's say if you're wanting to start running, for example. Now on day one, you're going to be super motivated, right? You have that 3 a.m. motivation still. You're thinking, okay, I got this. I'm going to run a full bloody marathon. And so you run that damn marathon, and you waddle your happy ass home, and your feet feel broken, and you're wheezing, and you've lost 5 pounds of muscle and 1 ounce of fat, right? And day 2 rolls around, and you're like, okay, well, I've ran so much yesterday. Wouldn't hurt to only do a half marathon today, would it? And you're a superhuman, so you're able to do that, right? So you run a half marathon, and you get home, and you're like, oof, that was pretty damn tough on myself. I think I'm gonna take it easy tomorrow. So next day, you don't run at all, and you think to yourself, wow, it's pretty damn good not to be running. And so the next day, when times roll around, you might not want to run your marathon, but ultimately you don't. And ultimately, you've begun a new habit. Truly, it is just the habit that you previously held, right? So how do we prevent this from happening? Simply put, we take our current skill level into account. And when forming a new habit, forming a new plan for a habit, you set a bar for yourself, right? And you make it what you think is reasonable. Then you cut that in half, you cut that in half, and you cut it in half again until the bar is so low that it would be unreasonable for you to fail. You want it to be substantial enough to where you still require some level of growth, right? But also low enough to where it isn't impeding enough for you to want to quit immediately enough, right? Till you have the discipline to keep on going with it. So, start off with a push-up a day. Start off with reading a paragraph a day. Because I think that some minute amount of work is still overall going to prove itself to be superior than a one-day marathon. To draw back to the previous example, right? So when we're trying to dissolve a habit, truly, we want to slow our actions down. You're scrolling on TikTok 8 hours a day. Okay, let's lower the bar that TikTok is at currently, just a nudge, just slightly. Okay, I'm watching 8 hours, now I'm watching 7.5, right? And that's still crazy, but I think that progressively what we can do, what I can do, is dissolve it at such a rate that I can consistently, slowly edge myself off of it. In an ideal world where I had some ultimate discipline, where I was a David Goggins level opponent, then surely I could just quit cold turkey, right? But I don't think that version of me currently exists. And I'm pretty damn sure that version of me doesn't exist at the moment, right? So slowly lower that bar that you have. And then eventually you can quit cold turkey. And eventually it's going to be good. And eventually you can replace that with a superior habit. So what about addiction, though? Many kids, especially my generation, are addicted to something like lust. Some others are addicted to weed or alcohol, what's very archetypical of a Western child to do, right? Perhaps not be addicted to, but still, right? So I'd say that you want to turn your weaknesses into your strengths. And if you'll forgive my language, use it to set your ass on fire, right? You're addicted to adult content. I'm addicted to adult content. I'm the result, the natural result of what an almighty, unrestricted access to the internet will often bring to a boy, right? I discovered adult content when I'm 12, maybe 11, and I'm addicted to it still to this day, right? So I think slowly the bar I've reached, the level I've reached in this addiction has become substantial. It giants over me, right? Like a skyscraper or like K2, and you look at it and you think, okay, I'm gonna have to climb that, and I'm gonna have to slowly take this down. I'm gonna have to I've reached the top of K2, right? Now it's time to climb down the east side, okay? So slowly but surely, you test what you can do. For some people, Some will only be, uh, I suppose, pleasuring themselves once a day, right? And others have reached the point where they're doing multiple times a day, or a mix in between, right? Okay, well, I'm doing it 4 times a day. Let's see if I can do it 3. Let's see how low I can aim for. How far I can strive without having to rely on my day-long motivation, right? And eventually, what I imagine will happen is you'll reach once a day. And then from there, every month or so, you can go to once every other day, once every 2 days, once every 3 days, so on and so forth. And I think that by the time you reach 2 or 3 weeks, I don't think it's entirely unreasonable to quit cold turkey from that point on, right? But what do I know? I'm really just blabbering on here. And I don't have any actual practical evidence to support this to any extent. Really only my thoughts in here. So I will test that out. I'll test the theory. And I've tried 1,000 times to beat lust. I've prayed to God. I've repented to God. I've done all of my power that I think I can to resist what has chained me so. But I think it's time to step down this mountain one step at a time. That's about it. God bless.